whole family was murdered at this house. As unbelievable as that may sound, it's not even the craziest part of the story. This was the Miyazawa home in Setagaya, Japan, and inside it lived 4 people. While they were at home shortly before the new year, relaxing and enjoying the evening, an intruder broke into their home and killed them all, and he was in no rush to leave. The killer stayed inside the house for hours, during which he ate the family's food, used their restroom, and even used their computer. He left behind a mountain of evidence, including his blood, his fingerprints, and most of his clothes, but to this day, he's never been found. The case, often called the Goldilocks murder in Japan, continues to attract public attention due to how shocking it was and is. I'm Mr. Mysteries, and this is the Setagaya family murder. Setagaya is an administrative ward inside the Tokyo metropolis, a prefecture formed by combining the old Tokyo city with surrounding cities and islands. As a result, Tokyo is basically the Japanese equivalent to a state. Setagaya is one of the safest wards in Tokyo, which makes this crime all the more shocking. This just isn't the type of place you expect something like this to happen. In the year 2000, Tokyo planned to expand Setagaya Park, the park right next to the Miyazawa home, as it had become quite popular. As a result, residents near the park were offered good money to sell their homes, even over 100 million yen in some cases, which at the time would have been worth over $1 million. This included Mikio and Yasuko Miyazawa, ages 44 and 41, who sold their home but were still living in it at the time, planning to move the following March. The couple lived with their children, Rei and Nina, in a neighborhood called Setagaya. Yasuko's mom Haruko lived next door alongside Yasuko's sister, her brother-in-law, and her nephew, though the couple were often not home for various reasons. By the time of the murder, the neighborhood, which once held 200 homes, was down to just 4 and still shrinking. Yasuko was a tutor, holding classes in her sister's home since she was often away. Mikio worked from home for Interbrand, a marketing company based in London. Though they might not have been rich, the Miyazawas enjoyed a comfortable life. Nina was 8 years old and Rei 6. The 2 children loved their grandmother, often spending time with her and even cooking for her. In fact, Nina had gone to visit her grandmother the very night she and her family were killed. The day of the murder itself was like any other. At around 6 p.m., the Miyazawa family went shopping at Seijo Gakuen Maya Station, a railway and commercial center just under a mile from their home. They ate dinner together, enjoying a meal consisting of shirataki noodles and rice with vegetables, mushrooms, and chicken, and around 7 p.m., Yasuko called her mother next door. Nina went over to watch TV with her until 9:30, and at 10:38, Mikio read an email for work. It looked to be another normal night, until it wasn't. Sometime after 11 p.m. on December 30th, 2000, an intruder broke into the Miyazawa home and began his assault. Police aren't certain about how he got in, but the leading theory is that he climbed a tree onto the second-floor balcony and went in through the window, cutting its screen off to get inside. Once inside, he went to Rei's room where he found the young boy sleeping. He strangled him and left, walking downstairs to continue the massacre. It was at this point that he encountered Mikio, whom he chased upstairs. As he was running to the second floor, the intruder stabbed Mikio all over with the sushi knife that he had brought with him, breaking the blade in the process. After that, he made his assault on Yasuko, who was asleep in a room on the 3rd floor with her daughter Nina. After climbing the ladder, the intruder stabbed Yasuko with the same blade he used to kill her husband. Since he broke it earlier, however, it didn't work. Because of this, the killer went downstairs to grab a knife from the kitchen, during which time Yasuko grabbed Nina in her arms and climbed down to the second floor, trying to get away. She wasn't able to escape, sadly, as the intruder caught her on the second floor, stabbing and cutting her repeatedly. In her last moments, Yasuko did her best to protect her daughter, who was the intruder's last victim. Just like that, the entire family was gone. After murdering the entire family, the intruder was in no hurry to leave. He stayed at the house for hours, drinking barley tea and eating ice cream for the family's freezer, and he took time to rummage through the family's documents and rob the place as well. He wasn't careful about leaving behind evidence either. In fact, he left a mountain of evidence. He ate with his hands, squeezing the ice cream for the containers and leaving his fingerprints all over the place in the process, as well as his saliva. He had cut himself deeply during the assault and used the family's bathroom to bandage himself, meaning his blood was everywhere. He even left his feces unflushed in the family's toilet, and he left some of his clothes on the couch when he fled the crime scene. He fled sometime after 1 a.m., and we know this because he used the family's computer to access the internet at 1:18 a.m. on December 31st. He apparently tried to buy movie tickets with Mikio's credit card, but it didn't work. What happened after that is a mystery. No one knows who he was, why he did it, or where he went afterwards. For all we know, he could have literally just walked out the front door after committing one of the worst killings in Japan's modern history. The morning after the murders, Haruko called over to greet her family and make plans for the day, but they didn't answer. So she went next door and rang the doorbell. Again, no answer. It was at this point that she used her key to open the door, walking right into the crime's grisly aftermath. Haruko called the police, and soon enough dozens of Tokyo Metropolitan Police officers were on the case. The first thing police wanted to do was to get a suspect, and given the plethora of evidence left behind, it looked to be an extremely easy task. However, as time went on, investigators realized that the case was far more difficult than it let on. For starters, the killer's fingerprints weren't in any Japanese database, even though Japan requires fingerprinting to get a driver's license, passport, or other official documents. Even after comparing more than 50 million fingerprints, none were a match for the killer. An analysis of the killer's blood revealed that he was likely East Asian with possible European descent on his mother's side. His Y chromosome, which you inherit from your father, had a distinct marker which police said was common in 1 in 4 or 5 Koreans, 1 in 10 Chinese, and 1 in 13 Japanese. Looking at his clothes, investigators found more possible links to Korea. For example, his footprints were from a size 11 shoe made in Korea that wasn't sold in Japan. Other than that, the killer left behind a variety of apparel, including a bloodstained shirt, a fanny pack with various dyes and sand from Nevada in it, a jacket, a scarf, a bucket hat, some handkerchiefs, and black gloves which he brought but didn't wear during the murder. Many of the clothes, as well as the knife the killer brought, could have been bought locally. Considering the physicality needed to enter the house and everything else, police came up with a general description of the killer. He was around 5'7" or 170 centimeters and between the ages of 15 and 40 and possibly a foreigner. He was also quite thin since the window he entered was very small and he left no clothing fibers on it, meaning he got through the window without rubbing up against the side of the window too much. To top it all off, he had a deep cut on his hand. With this image in mind, they set out to find their man. Looking more closely at the killer's shirt, police determined it was one of only 130 sold in Tokyo. They tried to track down the shirt's buyers, hoping one of them would be the culprit, and they even managed to find 12 of them. However, none of them were determined to be the killer. In the more than 20 years since the murder, more than 280,000 investigators have worked on the case, investigating countless tips and thousands of pieces of evidence. There's even a 20 million yen reward for information leading to the killer's arrest. Despite the large police presence and incredible public support, no one has been arrested for the crime, and the killer eludes law enforcement to this day. As time goes on, it looks like the killer may never be caught. Even though no one knows for sure what happened that night, some people still have their own ideas. Remember how I said there was a park next to the Miyazawa home? Well, it turns out that before he passed away, Mikio was spotted arguing with some young skaters who went there. Apparently, he didn't like how noisy they were. Because of this, some people think a disgruntled skateboarder climbed over the tree and committed the unspeakable acts. Interestingly enough, the killer's clothes did have sand from the park on them. It's certainly possible, but it doesn't make much sense to kill the entire family over an argument with one member. Plus, the sand could just be from walking through the park to get to the Miyazawa's home. All things considered, the theory just doesn't make much sense. Some people think the murder might have been financially motivated. After all, the Miyazawas did get paid a hefty sum to sell their homes. The killer took some money from the scene, about 150,000 yen in fact, which was seen to support the idea even more. However, he left behind more money than he took, not to mention jewelry, which makes robbery an unlikely motivation. Even if it wasn't a simple robbery, however, money could have definitely been involved. Many people speculate that the family's murder was a contract killing. In other words, someone hired a hitman to take the Miyazawas out. There are various reasons why someone would do this, including financial motives. Fumiya Ichihashi, a well-respected investigative journalist in Japan, says the same in his 2015 book, The Setagaya Family Murder Case. According to Ichihashi, he met with a South Korean man named Kei who had much to say on the subject. Kei claims to have at one point talked to Yasuko, who while telling him about her son's health problems, mentioned the money she got from selling her home. Wanting this money for himself, Kei devised a plan to take it. He hired R, another South Korean man who served in the military at some point, to do the job. R then entered the family's home and committed the atrocious acts already described. Giving more credibility to his argument, Ichihashi claims to have gotten a hold of R's fingerprints, and he says they're a match for the ones found at the crime scene. This theory would also explain why the house was flipped upside down when police arrived. After killing the family, Kei was looking for their money. In the end, he didn't find much as he only made off with about $1,500 worth of currency and left behind more than he took. Though Ichihashi is famous for his investigative prowess, his theory isn't bulletproof. For one, the killer used a knife that wasn't well suited for the task, which is why it broke on Mikio. If he were really a professional hitman, you would expect him to know what type of weapon to use. Critics of the theory also point out that foreigners are fingerprinted upon entering Japan, meaning the killer would have had to been smuggled in, which is no small task. The biggest problem with the murder for hire theory, however, is the sheer amount of evidence the killer left behind. If he was a hitman, he's the sloppiest hitman ever. But perhaps being sloppy didn't matter. If the killer was really a South Korean national as Ichihashi claims, then he could be as careless as he wanted. After all, without any witnesses or other evidence linking him to the crime, extradition would be almost impossible, meaning the killer would be safe once he left the country. As Ichihashi writes, my interpretation was that the criminal was not Japanese, did not live in Japan, and immediately escaped overseas. That said, South Korea has assisted Japan on a number of cases, so escaping the country might not be a ticket to freedom after all. In the end, we may never know, as though Ichihashi claims he gave the killer's fingerprints over to the police, R still remains unarrested. Another theory is that a worker at a nearby grilled meat shop committed the murders. An article published by Yahoo News recounts the story, wherein several witnesses, including a witness referred to as A, give details about the suspect, called H. A claims to have seen H the day after the murders while he was walking his dog, no more than a few miles from the crime scene. When A saw him, he had a bandage on his hand, just like the killer would. A described H as a young man, likely around 20, and standing at about 5'7", just like the police's initial profile. A also mentioned H's hat, which he believed was similar to the clothing left at the scene, and his BMX bike. Since there was no sign of a car involved in the crime, it's very possible the killer rode a bike to and from the scene. Following up on the tip, police interviewed several other potential witnesses, including H's former boss and co-workers. They corroborated H's physical description, although one interviewee personally thought it wouldn't make sense for H to be a murderer since he was, quote, like a big brother to her. H's former boss, whose home had been vandalized shortly before the Miyazawas were murdered, mentioned that he often invited his employees home with him. If H really killed the Miyazawas, he could also be the one who robbed the boss. Unfortunately, nothing has ever come of the H story, leading many to believe it's nothing more than another dead end. The shop he worked at closed down sometimes after the murder, and with it went all records of H being there. H himself has never been arrested as a result of the investigation. Those are the main theories surrounding the murder. Some people speculate about revenge for some grievance or another, but those are just general ideas without much weight to them. Exactly 100 days after the murder, a Buddhist statue depicting a protector of children was found near the home. As they were unsure who had placed it there, police passed out flyers asking whoever placed it to come forward. Why did they place it there? Was it a memorial to the dead or a message? Did they know who did it or have some information on the case? In any case, the flyers never got a response, so this too became a dead end. Today, the Setagaya family murders are as shocking to the public as they were 23 years ago. The Tokyo Metropolitan Police Force has vowed to never give up on the case, and the public won't give up either. As a result of public outcry, the statute of limitations was removed on potential death penalty cases so that the work on the Miyazawa's murders could continue. To the public, the idea that the children could be so mercilessly slain is unfathomable. Even the officers involved are personally grieved by it. Takeshi Tsuchida, the former chief of police at the Seijo police station who oversaw the case until he retired, regularly visits Mikio's mother to this day, talking with her about the case and sharing his sympathies. Mikio's mother, the most devastated person of all, often prays for her family and wonders why her grandchildren especially had to go through what they did. Tsuchida, Mikio's mother, and others from the police force pass out flyers every year at the train station near Setagaya, hoping someone will finally come forward with information to close the case. The Miyazawa home was eventually demolished in 2019 since it was falling apart. Before it was demolished, the entire house was recorded and modeled so that investigators wouldn't lose any valuable evidence. More than 23 years after their deaths, the Miyazawas live on in public thought and fascination, not just in Japan, but all around the world. As time goes on, we may only hope to one day know what really happened that night in Tokyo. Hey guys, I really hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe as these will all help the channel to grow. I'm very proud to announce the launch of my Patreon. For just $5 a month, you can have your name appear at the end of my videos as a supporter while I thank patrons, and you'll gain instant access to uncensored versions of my videos. For those who wish to give more, there are higher tiers available, with added benefits including seeing my videos before they're uploaded on YouTube, and extra in-depth information about highlighted cases. I would very much appreciate your support, and they'll definitely help me to crank these videos out faster than ever. Thanks once again for watching.